everyone. Hi,
Hello.
John. Hi, Adam.
Hello.
We will talk today about strange smells that we like, not necessarily in perfumes, but in perfumes as well. So when we like something from nature, from life, experience, and we find it in perfume, it can be such a click. Don't you think?
Absolutely. I agree. In fact, when you said strange smells, I got very excited at the idea because I think some strange smells are, I would call them positive triggers.
Not necessarily strange, by the way. It may be not very perfumey, but there are not that many bad smells, I guess. You can find some positive anchor for almost everything.
Yeah,
I do
agreed.
have to laugh, like at the definition of what one person would think is a strange smell or a chord to include in a perfume, and another person's just like, "Oh, that sounds great." Let's dive headfirst into that.
Yeah, like that cat pee smell, for example. It's exciting.
Mhm.
I have 3 cats. It's not quite as exciting to me.
Yeah, if you think about cats, but if you think about blackcurrant, actually, I found that specific kind of cypress. It's Chinese cypress, one of them, and it smells exactly like blackcurrant leaves. So when you water it or when you cut branches, it smells so good. So very much like blackcurrant and boxwood, English boxwood, they are very similar in that cat pee vibe that I absolutely love in perfumes.
Nice.
It's not cat pee for me. It's just a very tart, green, aromatic, so potent and charismatic and fruity as well. So and woody. So it's just such a complex accord that I appreciate. And we have a number of perfumes like that.
Agreed. It is very complex. I think that might be one of the first things that I think I learned when I kind of came back into fragrance at the beginning of this new century was how some of these complex smells, when they're put in a certain context, are so beautiful, but it takes us a while to appreciate them again. I think a good one for me, if we're talking about strange smells, was to realize how much I love the smell of, I guess we would call it the smell of chlorine, or the smell of a pool. When the smell of a public pool or a pool in a school
Super
or something
positive,
like that.
yes.
Yeah, I absolutely love that smell, and it has very positive associations for me. Even though I think for some people it smells not necessarily bad, but not pleasant. Whereas for me it's a very exciting smell. Part of it is because I love to swim, and I always associated something positive about swimming in a pool. But I love the idea that it's a very clean smell, right? That it's about keeping things clean. So maybe that's why I never fully dislike that whole aquatic smell in perfumes, because it always, to me, was a bit reminiscent of the smell of chlorine, and I always had very positive associations to that.
I think that a great part of you liking that smell, it's association with swimming, with going somewhere, doing exciting things. So because what is smell? Smell is what we think about it mostly. So I guess it's just a huge part of liking chlorine. By the way, chlorine in Russia and chlorine in United States is different.
Is it?
That's what I noticed, yes. And your chlorine is subtler, nicer, I guess.
Oh, really? Is it stronger?
Yeah, it's just like,
harsher?
washing floors.
That smell like
Very
like almost
harsh and very
chlorine bleach type of smell.
Yes.
Do you think they just use more chlorine in Russia?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they just not that nice towards. I mean, you can handle it. All right.
Oh, that's good to know, though. That's
really, actually, do you have that chlorine smell inside some perfume that you can relate to?
I think the classic is the parallel is something from a classic like Davidoff Blue Water. I've always liked that smell, and I know a lot of niche folks, they kind of don't like that smell, but I like the cologne smell. I've always found it really interesting. Now, mind you, a lot of perfumers used way too much of it for a long time, but there's also some of that in like Estee Lauder's white linen. I think that kind of very crisp, watery type smell.
And clean, yeah.
Yeah, I like clean smells.
A clean towel, right?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, exactly. I have a lot of very positive associations with that smell. Again, I think it's been used to death, but I've been seeing it come back into fragrances and being used up with a lot more novelty now than it used to. So that's kind of nice to see. But and some niche people are using it. They're kind of playing with the idea a little bit more to use this sort of like olfactive memories, things like that. I think I'd say like some of the classics, like Cool Water from Davidoff. That's the one I was thinking of.
I guess I'll kind of play off of that a little bit. I like the smell of aloe vera, the plant that we put on ourselves after a sunburn, something like that.
Real one when you cut to put on some burns.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, it's been used for much more than just healing sunburned skin throughout the ages, but some species of it are consumable, if I'm not mistaken. And I think I've had a couple of beverages that use its like jellied form. They make like a little like almost like you'd put in a boba tea, like a little jelly version of it that can go in some flavored waters and things like that. And it's really quite refreshing. But I think that's really why I'm interested in it, is because it's like being interested in aquatics and being interested in alternative uses of aquatics. You're not very far off from aloe vera because it has that cool, crisp, juicy, watery kind of smell without going too much in the fruity direction, which I think a lot of cologne scents do.
Very pleasant and bitter, like very serious.
Serious is probably a good word for it. It is sort of a pensive smell.
Without any sweetness, without any playfulness, just straight serious.
I kind of see it as playful just because it reminds me a little bit of cucumbers. And I think, in fact, some of the materials that you might use to make an aloe vera accord share some usage in common with cucumber accords themselves. So it has that vegetal quality, which I kind of think is really fun and really like bright and fizzy and enlivening. But you're right. It's sort of the lack of sweetness does kind of make it a little bit more of a serious smell, I guess, insofar as it's not very sweet or fruity.
I know that smell very well because we used to have a plant inside the house always. And I think that was very usual for Russian families in general to have that medicine stuff inside the house. And so my mom used it all the time when we cut ourselves or burn ourselves. That's why maybe it's serious for me. So it's serious business. You cut yourself, you have to heal with this plant. And do you have it, that accord somewhere in fragrances?
I've only so far smelled one fragrance that convincingly portrays it, although I've heard about others that do, which I'm interested in experiencing. But the one I really love, and forgive me, I know I've spoken about it on Fragrantica Talks already once before. It's called Sosekia. It's the newer release from Pierre Guillaume. It's really convincing as aloe vera. It's really like that green bottle you buy in supermarkets. You know, that's like dyed superficially green, and you open it up and you smell this.
I have to have
which makes it very playful in my mind. But then it also has a bit of an undercurrent of something like a orange blossom or a floral hit underneath, and some white musk, but done in a very interesting way, a little saltier than you'd expect a white musk accord to be.
Does it also have, and I may have to separate out the aloe vera. To me, it's always a little bit medicinal smelling, but is it like that in the Pierre Guillaume fragrance? No.
I suppose there's an element to it if you're very sensitive to medicinal notes. I think there's maybe an element of it that might remind you of a medicinal quality, but to me, it's more fresh. It's more focused on maybe the vegetal aspects and the floral aspects of the greenness in the plant material. So I wouldn't say it's heavily medicinal. No, it's probably my new favorite summery thing to wear and associate with the heat and relaxed times. And it's definitely something that I would revisit in the winter when I am soon to be sick of being stuck indoors.
John, what smells medicinal to you, by the way?
I'm glad you asked that, because I got a bottle of recently, which is a really favorite fragrance of mine, and I've been wanting to get. And it's interesting because it's kind of in a similar theme. The house is called Carthusia. It's an Italian house. This was made in 2000. So it's called Io Capri. And it is extremely medicinal with a twist of green, but it mostly comes from eucalyptus. If you were to ask me years ago, do you like the smell of eucalyptus? I would say, no, it's very far too menthol and reminds me of just straight medicine, nothing else. This is eucalyptus and mint leaves. When I look at this on paper, I think, this doesn't sound like something I would like. But somehow you put these kind of strange, very bracing, harsh notes together, which would always, to me, smell like medicine. And it just smells again like kind of a spa. It's all the wonderful green parts of eucalyptus. Like I have such an appreciation of eucalyptus now as a note in perfume when it's just used like a tiny, tiny amount.
It's also very complex. So eucalyptus, I don't know, do you have eucalyptuses there in New England?
No, we don't. That's
all we have here in California.
Yeah, we don't have any.
Even mulch is made of eucalyptuses. So all those wood shades. Really? So we are surrounded by the smell of eucalyptus.
Now this is interesting because here it's very, very exotic. I mean, if I think to Adam, would you agree? It's a very exotic plant here.
I mean, I think it's kind of hard just to get herbs to grow here. I mean, we're not that far north, but I mean, if you want to grow herbs in New England, you have to make sure it's in a really, really sunny spot. Otherwise, it's not going to grow to abundance.
I have a huge appreciation towards eucalyptus. It's such a resilient plant and can survive without water. And it has the accord of eucalyptus. It has fruity. It's very much like blackcurrant. So the stinky part of blackcurrant. So it's green and metallic and like saffron and also woody and earthy, like such a complex thing, and medicinal as well. So I can relate to that too.
I'm glad you mentioned the parts of like say being a bit metallic, because there's this almost like shiny aspect to it or something. It's like, I can't quite describe it, but I know what you mean about that slight metallic edge to it, which I find very attractive. And so that's why I think from being a child, I think eucalyptus always read to me as just pure medicine. And now as an adult, I'm able to appreciate these little subtler aspects to it, like the woodiness of it and that sort of metallic part to it and the herbal part. And this fragrance, I think it's supposed to be more of an island sensation. So the idea of mint leaves and eucalyptus and flowers, and I think there might be like a cactus note in here as well too. Fascinating stuff, but I really appreciate that kind of the medicinal smell. For me is actually pretty comforting, and I'm beginning to like that smell a lot.
For me, medicinal is also saffron and oud normally, but especially saffron. In medicinal, in a way, I imagine sharp tools. A little
like
scary.
A scalpel.
Yes, blood. So that all those things are kind of close together. But it's also very empowering, very powerful smell. And saffron also, it has a note of gasoline.
Saffron is weird, isn't it? Because there's that metallic note and that very like hard edge note, which it's like it shares with oud. It's something between spice and
I don't even know how to describe it.
Metal.
It's more like impression, right? Sensation, not the smell per se. I find this saffron based. It's Carrie New York Rose Ink that I really like. And it's more about leather and rose, but it's also gasoline a lot. Because of saffron. Oh, nice. Saffron is crazy. It's such a potential, I believe.
Yeah. No, saffron.
And very close to oud as well.
The Rose Ink's fragrance, is there oud in that or saffron in that smell?
I believe it's saffron. I'm not sure about oud. Just smells like leather jacket, gasoline, like motorcycle, and rose. So, yeah, better to describe it in these terms.
That's really cool. I'm going to actually, one quick thing. I brought something that's slightly similar, and people might really, really disagree with me. But do you remember this series from Guerlain? This was, I think they called the Oriental series or something.
Yeah, it's 3 or 4 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Santal Royale, and this has that very, very specific oud. In this case, it's a sandalwood, but it's got an oud accord in here as well. And it's that sharp, metallic, spicy.
Well, I didn't smell this particular one, but sandalwood is usually something electronic and like slightly spicy and very positive.
But this one is not a smooth, like buttery sandalwood at all. This is a very spicy, sharp. I don't even think saffron is listed as a note, but this is just pure saffron. So it's more like a saffron oud sandalwood, which sounds like a drop of that same edge that's in the Kira New York thing you're describing. It also has a bit of that slightly clinical smell you were talking about of like sharp knives.
Like very clean and scary.
Yes, this is not smooth at all. It's like Guerlain stuff. It's very refined and, but this is edgy.
That collection in general, so it's, I guess it's oriented towards the south. So Arabian style kind of perfume. So I guess. It's not very Guerlain to me.
No, it isn't. No, it's a good
General.
point. Adam, what else have you got?
I do have another category or a pet note of mine that I think is, I mean,
Pet note
depending
of
on
yours, such a good saying. Oh, I have to steal it from you.
I really think the note of clay is kind of, I mean, depending on who you are as a person, might be strange to wear in a perfume. I think the smell of it is really interesting. You know, earthy notes in general get a lot of attention in the niche scene, especially lately. And that's like to the extent that many people in the fragrance community, I think, are beginning to realize that like geosmin and they're beginning to like pick up on the lingo and of the materials that make an earthy smell earthy. I think probably if we're looking back on like Zoologist Bat, for example, it probably gave the lexicon of earthy related descriptions to a lot of fragrance aficionados who might not otherwise have realized that they like those kinds of smells. And I think that the smell of clay kind of brings that a little bit of a step further in terms of perfume, because to me, clay is earthy notes that have been refined and aged somewhat so that the really dank qualities disappear. And all you have left are these semi-leathery facets, semi-plasticine facets that very softly dampen. And what is the clay smell if not really wet earth minus the dank quality? And I think that a couple of perfumes do this fairly well. Something that an article John wrote actually introduced me to is Fayum from Jasmine Sarai. It's got like a green, almost palm or another kind of aloe-like edge to it insofar as like there's a vegetal quality, there's a leafy, crunched leaf quality that also kind of prolongs the idea of clay in the fragrance itself. And it's a really hard note to portray because you can go earthy and you can go leathery, and finding clay is like going between those two areas. John, I don't know how you feel about this, but if you were to express clay in a perfume, how would you go about that?
Oh, gosh, I don't know, because it's a tough note, right? I know exactly what you're saying about how it's earthy, right? One good memory I have with clay is my mom, she had a kiln in the house and used to fire porcelain. She used to make her own porcelain, but that smell of they call it greenware, like after you pour it initially and then pour it out, before you fire it, it has that mineral smell of unfired clay. And that smell, it's all those things you're talking about where it's dry, it's almost chalky in a sense, and it's a subtle smell. But it has, like you're saying, it has that smell of dried dirt, but without like, it's not the dank it's not like compost or like rotting leaves or any of that kind of stuff. It's all
not like soil.
Right. It's very arid kind of smell, but it's beautiful.
It's fragile and also warm, so it's wet and dry at the same time. So I have this clay.
Oh wow, she has clay.
Yeah, you've got clay right there.
Yeah, and I don't know, guys. Do you have ceramic cafe in your area?
Yeah, we do. I think. Yeah, I think we do.
So that smell when they actually put everything in the oven, and it's warm and it smells that dry and very clay-like. So that dusty and fragile and substantial. There is one perfume with that particular note, more terracotta. It is the first perfume for Eau d'Italie, and it was created by Bertrand de Chaufour for them, and it's very unusual. I don't know if they have it still because it's not an easy fragrance. But yeah, that was the idea, to portray the smell of terracotta and clay. And that's so Italian, right? Don't you think?
And it sounds like that idea is it's like the baked clay sort of, right? Yeah.
Already formed and baked and maybe even old.
I also love in that smell, there's always that idea that it came out of the earth, and it's been transformed through heat and all of that. So it still retains part of the earth. And there's something very universal too, because we've had this since the beginning of time too. I love that idea.
And thinking about that, you also think about the warmth of your hands because they form it. So there is a very, very positive, very humane something about it.
It's really cool to me when they use it in perfume, like when the note is actually successfully portrayed, because it's created with materials that would otherwise very much dampen other notes. And so when I smell it in perfume, intentionally, it's very attention grabbing because it's such a singular smell that's very gentle in nature. So perfumers really have to kind of amp it up against other notes to really communicate it clearly.
I don't even know what to use to make that smell of clay.
Many different things, apparently.
I know. Yeah.
There's an
What not to
aldehyde
use,
that smells a
but what
little
to
bit
use.
like clay.
Something woody, aromatic. It's very strange. Smell of fish. Do
Oh,
you know
okay.
any perfume? I do. First of all, it's Hilde Soliani Eau de Cuisine. It's purposely created to represent the smell of freshwater fish. That is already prepared on your table
Okay, no, this one I haven't
for
smelled.
frying or whatever. And it does smell like fresh fish. It sounds kind of disgusting, right? But it's not stinky. It's just very, very fresh. And yeah, it's fish. And it's water.
Didn't she also do one that smelled like oysters as well too, if I'm not mistaken?
Oysters, I would say Atelier. I think that mainly has something with oyster, or at least with that background for that. It's very appetizing.
I absolutely love that smell. It was crazy. But I didn't know about this fish one. But see, now that's interesting to me because I think we have different ideas in our head about the idea of a fresh fish. And that smell is very different than something that's been overcooked and reheated, because that's, I think, where we get that really overpowering fish smell, which probably people might think. But the idea of very fresh fish should actually be a fairly clean smell with some...
Yes, it is. If I didn't say that it's fish, maybe you wouldn't even smell fish necessarily in that.
Yeah.
But when you're served with that word and a perfume, you try to find it and you do. So another fishy, it's not fishy, but it's caviar, it's Humanity by Mugler.
Yeah.
I guess it's it disappears from stores. At least I didn't see it together with other fragrances, so you can find it online. And the bottle is so cool. It's one of the best bottles I've seen so far. It's not like fish or caviar, but it's such a mysterious something that you know that is there and you don't want to jump inside. You just keep it okay, I know. I know that is something mysterious and maybe even dangerous or disgusting or something I don't want to touch, but it's good to be around. That kind of note for me, that caviar. And it's, of course, it's constructed of fruity, fig, lactonic, those aromatic something, but it has that, I don't know, abyss.
There's something in Womanity that is so, I don't know if you know what I mean, but it's it both pulls you in and pushes you out at the same time. It's such a strong fragrance in the way that it
I call Mugler's.
It's just bizarre. I remember the first time I sprayed some on me and I was so drawn into it. And I also thought this is just awful smelling, but it was, it's so compelling.
Nutty, don't you think?
There's tons I made up a word. Actually, I know we were talking about doing this for a group article, but I have this word, I called it squelchy, where it's kind of when something gets behind your jaw, it's sort of I don't know quite how to describe it. I'll have to work on it. Squelchy is the
I would say that many Mugler fragrances can be described like that. Yeah, because they're so intense in terms of everything that you have to chew, you feel it, right?
Yeah. It's almost there's the flavor's too intense and you're kind of trying to, your brain's trying to adjust to too much stimulus or something. But that's what I remember thinking when I smelled Womanity. I do remember though, when I first smelled it, I thought this is genius because it's a sort of mainstream, it's a popular fragrance. And yet he's playing these tricks in a way, by doing something so crazy, in a sense.
It's savory, all right. So it's not only gourmand to the sweet side, it's also savory. That's what they were actually described it. They started with it. And this one actually is the first one before it was released. So I got this bottle and it used to be pink and this time it's yellow now, so you can see.
That's right, it was different.
But the scent didn't change. So one of the most powerful Womanities I have, because it became thinner, a little bit more agreeable. First one was very powerful.
I still have a pretty sizable decant of what must be probably one of the first batches or close to in the first few years of it. So I was thinking of something that was kind of interesting. So you were, you brought your bag of clay up before and you were talking about clay before, but I was thinking about something different. I don't know if either of you have this memory, but there's a very particular smell. It's going to be hard for me to describe it. I'll try. I don't know if you remember in school when a lot of my strange smells are about being a kid, and one of them is making paste or clay in school. And remember, there used to be a clay you could make with salt. It was like a salt and starch. I can't remember what you make it out of, but it's very similar to Play-Doh. It's like a dough clay.
Only not with sugar, but with salt. That's what we did.
You make it with salt. Yes, you make it with salt. I'm going to have to look it up on Google because I remember being but it had a smell. It had a smell to it. And it's similar to the smell in Play-Doh. And people might think I'm crazy, but I smell that when I smell Thalassicos by Diptyque. It's absolutely in this fragrance. So it's that smell of fig.
Like a little plasticky something?
It's not the pretty fig smell. It's that slightly artificially smelling. It smells almost a little bit like cereal or wheat, but it's got that softer, milky edge from fig. There's something between the two, and I might be crazy, but there's something.
Fig smell in general is so complex.
Extremely complex. And I know that's
super annoying too, but also very attractive.
This is it, as fig and I have kind of a strange relationship. Sometimes I'm very interested in it, and sometimes it's a little off-putting to me.
So the smell of wheat?
It kind of reminds me of the smell of wheat. Yeah, not necessarily in that happy bread way, but more like wheat that you'd almost eat with cereal or something, like in the morning, like ground up wheat.
It's not bread.
Which is a different kind of smell for me. I don't quite know. But anyway, so I associate all of this stuff with this clay that I used to make in school, which to me is not an edible thing or something that you would dare somebody to eat. Like you pay them the money to eat. That's probably what I mean.
I'll bet you my lunch money that you won't put that in your mouth. Yeah.
Right. But I guess all of this comes up. There are certain things from childhood that I think of, like toys or like crayons had a certain smell that I love, and like clay and all of those things that we used to play with that I think have very, deeply embedded in my head, which are definitely not sort of perfume smells, but I'm very attracted to some of those smells. They have happy associations for me.
Yeah, that's why we find it in perfume, and we instantly have a very personal connection to it. So I can relate to the scent of sauna and those heated rocks inside sauna, and also iron. It's this one. It's age 24 Hermes. Sauna is a part of my life since a very early age, and I know that smell very well of heated rock.
I was going to ask you about that smell and how it relates to H24 too. Is there any particular things that create that smell of sauna for you in particular, like from your memory, like any
so
natural
it's heated rocks. It's absolutely have to be surrounded by heated wood, because the bathhouse is wooden. So the fresher the wood, the better. So because it's aromatic, and it's also like warmth, and that steam. Yeah, this kind of smell.
So for you, it's not just like the smell of mineralic rocks or stones and wood. It's
warm.
about the
and
relationship
it
of those smells.
This is very strange. It smells like very hot.
Yeah.
In the background.
It's the relationship of those like really singular smells to steam and water, right? Because what is a sauna if not drenched in humidity?
Steam. Because sauna, we have all kinds of saunas, that Finnish sauna is without steam actually. So it's just hot. And this particular fragrance, you smell it so much. It's a lot. Of course, it has that dusty pineapple. It's not like real pineapple, but it's artificial pineapple that is very close to the original one. And also the smell of the city, like clean with beton and so glass, and that sauna. Very strange combination. And I learned to appreciate it more and more, because my start was like, no, too much, too messy. And too powerful. For me, it's really like futuristic.
Something that I noticed about what you were talking about a moment ago, John, and what you were talking about a moment ago, Elena, is in school, like early school day smells, when you have like that unstructured time that they give you to make a craft using that putty-like substance, or in your case, Elena, if you have that unstructured sort of relaxation and personal care time to go to a spa. I think what both of you are describing really are like the sense of unstructured time. like time where you don't have to be doing something else for work, for school, for any particular engagement other than here, play around with this, or here, sit in this hot room and relax. And I think that maybe that's probably why when we smell something that reminds us of those times in a fragrance, the result can be so emotionally powerful for us.
And we also can change our approach, our perception of certain things that you, for example, didn't like when you were a kid. And now you like it because it has such a strong connection to your childhood. Like, for example, like roasted onions, this kind of thing, fried onions that I absolutely hated. Now I like because it has that connection to my childhood.
Do you smell that in fragrance often by any chance? I hope not, actually.
No, the closest thing to roasted food I smelled in a perfume created by L'Oc Don. It was a part of speed smelling event, and also fragrances prepared by IFF to show off like their perfumers and also their captives. So in one smell, it was a smell of ink, and it has that bacon accord.
I was just thinking about was that whole notion that you can't change certain facts, but you can change your attitude toward them. I guess that might be part of this idea what you were describing about how our ideas shift about something, because I think we may miss something that we just don't have anymore, maybe something from the past, but now, or it's different, or I'm finding this might sound very funny, but certain smells that are associated with what we might have called like industrial smells, but they're actually really kind of almost nostalgic industrial smells. Like we don't actually smell them anymore, but like things like plastic kind of smells, which I associate more with like the 80s or 90s than like today, because we're getting much better about recycling and all of that. But there's certain like smells of like things like burnt plastic or things like that actually intrigue me a lot more now. Whereas before, I think they just smelled awful, but I like smells like vinyl. I love when you smell those types of industrial smells and perfumes.
Did you melt lead like on a
Yes, my brother used to do that. Yeah, he used to do that. He would pour them into molds and make little soldiers out of them. That was.
Or if you find something industrial, like somewhere from the construction, those things that made of lead, and you put them together and you melt them. And I don't know, does it have any smell? I don't remember, but it was fun.
I did. I don't know if it has a smell. It probably does have a smell, but I mean, it probably wasn't very good for us. I know some.
I'm listening.
They added lead to wine, right?
It's
for
true.
a better taste. So don't do it. It's just like stuff.
I have to forgive me. I'm a little bit younger, and so to me, when you two are describing yourselves playing with lead, I'm sitting over here horrified. Like, what are they going to tell me they were playing with mercury next? we were just throwing around the mercury.
We did special like medallions of that because you use a spoon. So to shape it nicely.
The thing that's scary is how easy it is to melt lead. Like it's just the melting point is so low. It's really used to be able to get a little burner to melt it and pour it into molds. And it was just, a little scary how easy it is to do that.
We used to play on construction sites. We were wild, like going everywhere.
Oh God, yes.
Terrified. Are you okay? Do you need a checkup?
I do remember, like, there's the smell of soldering things. And I remember my brother soldering metal parts together. And that had a smell, but I wonder if it was more like just the smell of the smoke coming from the soldering pen when you're soldering together pieces of metal.
That's amazing. No, it was coming from that resin that used to, I don't know, my father did it all the time. So, and I remember that very particular, it's like hot amber, right? Something very close to amber smell.
Yes, it is. That's a good.
That kind of resin that you switch between the metal, and so I don't know why you need that resin, but it just comes together with that thing. This particular smell you can find in Anatole Le Breton fragrance, and it's Bois Lumière. That intense, hot, ambery smell. It's very, very nice fragrance, actually. If you like amber, that would be like real one. That would be my first choice.
I was thinking of one fragrance which is talked about it a lot on Fragrantica, and to me it evokes a lot of strange smells. And it's funny because it's so common among some people, but Lalique's Encre Noire, which is,
Everybody
one of
loves.
those, yeah, everyone loves or is fascinated by. And it's one of those kind of gateway perfumes, I think. Of course, it's named for black ink. And you could say it does smell like ink. I mean, it's one of those, such a dark, dark fragrance. It really does smell. It's so strong, vetiver and cypress. And I think a bit of musk, but it to me smells like those smells of vinyl, ink, soot, sweep out a fireplace, that kind of sooty smell. It's all of those very, again, sort of industrial types of smells to me.
I like to smell it, and it's very hard to describe.
It's very pleasant. It's sometimes a bit too much, like I would not wear this every day. There's no way. And other times it's just pure vetiver to me. Like I can't get past it being vetiver, but then other times it just seems to evoke all
Don't
kinds
think about vetiver because otherwise it's going to be vetiver.
Yeah, exactly.
That's really funny because for me, Encre Noir and actually the contemporary formulation of Kouros, both to me smell very incensey, very much like church incense. Like having been to a few like Catholic funerals, there's a point in which if it's one of the more traditional parishes, they'll swing that little lighted incense box and they'll swing it over, throughout the hall or throughout the, the procession. And that type of incense to me is very easily detectable. I don't know if it's just a trick on my nose, probably is, in Encre Noir and the modern formulation of Kouros.
Oh, interesting.
To me, they smell almost identical.
In these fragrances,
I haven't actually worn Encre Noir in a while, and when I just sprayed this, now I realized it's very cool. It's a cool sensation. It's not like a hot. And I've always felt that the incense that they have, like in the Catholic Church, and the few times I've been like in the Russian Orthodox Church, like it's very cool, cold incense. It's not like a hot, spicy,
sweet also and woody, but I don't know, maybe because it's a church, so you have a totally different vision of it.
Right.
So it smells like different, as if you just sprayed from a perfume, I guess.
Yeah, right. It's going to always be that way. Maybe that's the whole thing about incense. It's always felt very strange to me is that it's when we have it in perfume, like incense by itself is a bit of a ritual by the fact you have to light it and blow on it and you have to let it sort of waft. Like it automatically makes you slow down. When you put it into perfume, it's almost like you're cheating a little.
Talking about woods and incense, do you like the smell of turpentine oil?
That's a tough one because it's
the sharp wood.
Compelling. It's a compelling smell. Sometimes I find it really attractive and sometimes it's just overwhelming. Like it's so strong that it could be
I smell it in a Miel de Bois, Serge Lutens, together with that very light honey. It's just like a tear going down the wood. Sometimes I smell it, sometimes I don't. Maybe it's not the most appealing note for others, but I like all those carpenter things, tools and woods, just because of my childhood and my father.
What I like about the smell in a way is it's something that I associate with fresh wood, which is so different from dry old wood, right? Because like
furniture,
fresh wood has that raw smell of sap, and it's such an attractive and interesting idea, something that was just cut or something like that.
Yeah, you smell it like from a crack. You smell it from inside the fresh wood.
I don't have a lot of experience, like personal scent memory attached to anything overly terpenic, at least not in my long-term memory. I might have to back out of that one just because I don't really have strong forged associations with terpenic smells. And now that you bring that up, it is interesting that I don't. My father was a home builder, and you'd think that between paints, like house paints or, things like that, that I would have developed something of an association with turpentine or terpenic smells in general. But I really haven't.
John,
cologne, no.
You should appreciate oil paint smell.
I do. Do you know what I have, which is really neat, is I bought a box of old, they were sort of vintage oil paints, and they were probably about 30 or 40 years old, and somehow they had not dried out at all. But one or two of the tubes, they'd started to leak just a little bit, but they were leaking out that linseed oil, and it was just really thick, and it was starting to dry up a little, but the smell was just crazy, like this really thick, like a resin almost, and it had that really deep smell of linseed oil and pigments. It's a very rich smell.
But when you go into the room with fresh paints, like with paintings, especially if it's small one. It's insane. It's so attractive.
It
I
is.
love it. And I found a little bit of that in this Vanilla Planifolia by Chloe. I mean, it's not that. I
Really?
don't want to scare anyone from this perfume because it's wonderful. It's from their exclusive line, so Vanilla Planifolia, and this is one of the best. And I absolutely enjoy it. So it's more flower of vanilla and not like the gourmand thing. But what is peculiar, it has that a little bit of oil, something like I can relate to as a oil paint. It just very light, like oil paint, but of very light shades, nuances, and with a light touch.
And it fits in with that whole group of, because I'm assuming there's vanilla, obviously.
Yeah, of course. It has vanilla, it has that sappy ingredient and that vegetal greenness to it. So a lot of stuff, but really also for me personally, I sense that oil inside. A very pleasant one. The smell of watercolors, for example, it's all totally different. Or gouache, or the same ink.
Gouache is
that bacon. That would fit inside the gouache.
We should make a perfume right here. Gouache accord and bacon. Do you know?
Well, if we combined it with our previous discussion around pumpkin scents, it could be gouache and squash.
Do you know too? There's a paint, and I'm forgetting the name of it. I think it's called casein, right? That it's an older. You can still buy casein. The basic medium is milk, is the binding agent. Yeah, so gouache, I think the binder is glue. Oil paint, it's linseed oil. Watercolor, I think, is also glue for the main pigment binder. And then casein is milk. It's like cooked milk.
How does it
or
smell?
Milk solids. It's very interesting smell. It's not so much like a milk, but more like a fatty smell. Like it smells a little bit like cream. With that fatty cream type of smell. Plus,
casein is a protein, isn't it?
It's milk protein, right?
Right. Perishable.
No, there's something they do. That would be interesting if it was perishable. Like paint faster. I think it's like a powdered form. Yeah, gouache has a great smell too, though. Like kind of a sharp,
quite soft actually, and very substantial. So it's something thick. Since I painted with that colors like when I was a child, so I know it very, very well. And we usually have that 8 colors that we just mixed together. It was very peculiar, very recognizable scent for me. So, and it has that bacon or something.
That's a bacon smell.
I didn't eat much bacon actually back then. So it's not my scent from childhood, but now I can relate them together. So bacon and gouache.
I have one more thing quickly I was going to mention, which I don't know if I've talked about this before, but I don't know if any of you, when you smell fragrances that involve iris, if you smell that paper smell, because that's very much attuned to my nose, is that pulp. It's like paper pulp smell.
When you smell iris, you think about paper.
Totally. It's about like wet paper, like almost the smell that's from like egg cartons, like that those type of. So this one in particular, the Iris de Champ from Obigant, this one, the first thing I smell out of here is overwhelming paper, like very pulpy, thick.
Adam, what connection do you have with the scent of iris? Because I also have my strong things.
Well, it depends, because for the longest time, I could only smell the Ionone powdery, super purse-like smell related to iris. And so then I discovered the actual raw material of orris root, or orris butter, as it's known in the perfumer's palette. And that smells completely different. That smells very earthy, and to John's point, kind of like a paper pulp, egg carton nuances as well. And that's the type of iris I prefer. Vastly prefer that to anything, overly powdery. I'm very sensitive to powdery notes. So anytime a fragrance explores the earthy, leathery, almost dry tin of spice facet of orris root or iris, the flower, then I'm very happy with that.
For me, iris usually is fabric, so it's definitely texture. I almost can feel it with my fingers when I smell it.
What does it feel like to you when you smell it?
Oh, it's the fabric with those rough knots. It's a fine thing, but it's like raw silk,
like shantung silk or something like that.
And very texturized. Yeah, that's my first association. It smells very sad to me.
This is still a very mysterious accord and note to me in perfumery.
Just like vetiver. because it's just so recognizable.
Certain notes just there's still a blank spot for me, which makes it interesting. I mean, when I smell them, they're all like they're new for me to smell them because I'm not the biggest fan in the world. So it's actually, which is good. It keeps me objective when I smell these things, but I still smell paper.
John, you wrote about Serge Lutens' Participe Passé. It also has a lot of stuff. How does it smell to you?
Oh gosh, I love that
I know
stuff.
the association because Serge Lutens, it's just like a box with different curiosities inside.
Yes, right. To me, it's just very thick and syrupy. It's like that fruity that remind me of, and people will laugh because some people hate this smell, but they were fruit cakes, like cakes with lots of fruit in them and that they make at Christmas. And some people hate that smell. I love that smell.
I can add another association to that bunch. A chicken. That our Igor told me because he found a chicken in that new Tom Ford Amber Brulance.
Amber chicken in that fragrance?
Yeah, I did too. So that fried
that's amazing.
Chicken. And there is a little bit of that here too. But it's such a mysterious scent for me. It is. Nutcracker. It's hard to describe. It's like something prepared by that master Drosselmeyer for kids, I guess, and it's very dark and it's very old, and it has books and woods and there's sweets that are quite old, but still
yes. What you just said about sweets that are old, like that's definitely
dried fruits, and what actually kids of that time preferred and liked. Like my great grandmother, for her, like dried fruit was a treat.
Yes,
it's not like as much for us these days, but it was. A really delicious stuff. So that kind of vision of sweets 100, maybe even 200 years ago.
To me, what I like about that is that's actually a very subversive idea, right? Because it's very antique. It's an antique idea, right? Which is so against the grain of like all this fresh and, like it's so against what modern current sensibilities
antique,
are.
But not old, because it's about kids.
Right. Yes, exactly. That's what's so interesting and where I think it's kind of subversive in that it's not just nostalgic. It's actually a little bit of like almost going in a time machine or something.
And the name suggests it too.
I find it fascinating. I really do. I've worn it quite often.
And another one I actually prepared. It's a scent. So it's Le Verge de Fer.
Sorry, it's the one with pear in it. That's a really nice one.
And iron, metallic note. Yes, exactly, pear. So that's the central part of it. And that pear, it usually has, for me, nail polish remover kind of stuff and metallic note as well. So it's very much like that. It depends on the concentration. When I see pear, I think about metal or nail polish. And those scents are pleasant to me. But it's just indivisible part of pear. Here you have pear even texturized. When you eat pear, it has those grains, like grain texture. So it's just like you eat pear, sensing all this little grain inside. It's a great fragrance.
When I read about it, I thought, this wouldn't suit my skin or anything. And then I sprayed it and I thought, oh my God, this is so interesting.
Sometimes I feel a lot of metal in it, and sometimes it's just pear, and just like every Serge Lutens fragrance. And the same thing with Frédéric Malle. They're so the mood of their own. And the character. So you have to actually catch their mood and your mood and combine them together in order to...
I like the way you said that. So something I want to say, because I never get much of a chance to say this, but speaking of pears, once was at somebody's house and we had a bunch of different stuff, and I ended up making a dessert just in the moment with pears, sort of poached pears and some sugar and stuff. And I ended up calling it Pears Brosnan. It's the stupidest thing ever, but I'll never get many chances to say that joke too often. So
we have to prepare something and brag to each other. Anything like really creepy, like mold. I have one mold amouage figment for men that is particularly moldy. Like in a barrel, like old wine barrel that is empty and that is kind of already covered in mold. Something like basement.
My basement now doesn't really have too many smells like that. My parents' basement from long ago. Like I remember that having that
I smell a lot of mold in there. It's not that black mold that we're all afraid of. It's just a nice mold. Could be.
I want to be careful how I characterize it. I don't want to say that the fragrance I'll mention is moldy. It certainly doesn't smell like... It smells very inviting to me. But Carduce from the Scottish house of Joram Studio definitely has that leaf that's starting to decay on the ground kind of smell.
Is it moist? Igor was looking exactly for those leaves that are wet, because I have one with dry leaves, and he said, you know what, I'm looking for fragrance with this particular association.
He should try it, because I don't necessarily get a huge wet sensation, like a wet leaf sensation, but I definitely get a leafy sensation. So, why not? He should probably try it.
They are rotten, all right.
I'll also just give a quick shout out to Mousse Illuminé from Rogue Perfumery. I don't get a rot sensation out of it, but it's that intense basement green, like that mossy, like super mossy kind of smell. It also goes a little soapy because it's sort of like a reference to Chypres and Fougères of the past. So it has those cleaner elements to it as well. But it's so intense on the moss that I can't help but associate it with like lichen.
Very old basement with a laundry machine.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that in it, definitely.
Yeah, we have so many. I mean, we haven't even touched the poopy jasmines or the honey.
Yeah, I would just add one last little thing I'd say is I've always been kind of intrigued by what to me are what are sometimes called some of the tropical flowers, or the yellow flowers or things like that. And they always smell to me very outside of what I know. They smell a bit like rubber, and it's the smell of banana skins. And it's not a creepy smell. I remember there's certain smells of like fruit that's rotting, and that I actually really like that smell when it starts to go off really bad. And so I was just smelling, this is a classic fragrance, which people are going to say, like, what are you talking about? It's called Fiji. It's this old school 60s tropical yellow flower fragrance, but it has all of that like lang lang, and I think, but there's also some hyacinth and things like that in there.
But something bodily, the yellow flowers.
Yes, it's a sweaty smell, but this is like the sweaty smell plus that like banana skin fragrance plus like rotting fruit, like rotting fruit skins.
Jackfruit? Maybe that would be the right thing.
Oh, jackfruit! Like, is that the same?
It's not the smell that is sweaty. It's the taste that is sweaty.
Oh God! Is it the same as durian, or is it different?
It's jackfruit and red fruit. It's just like this big fruit with spikes. You can see it in Hawaii. I guess in Florida as well. And it's just taste like that. Like
I've only tried it once.
And that ilang ilang has something of that, like something extremely unpleasant and unpleasant.
Almost yeasty in a way.
Yeah.
Paris Monte Carlo, no sipe ilang ilang. That fragrance has something like the combination of very attractive and very bodily scent taste.
It's a little bit like when, the body sweats and it almost gets a strange sweetness to it, which is not exactly pleasant, but it's a little bit like when fruit goes off a bit, or even when it's fermenting on the ground. It's both attractive and repulsive at the same time. Yeah. I always find that so
and if it's not sweet, like that jackfruit, it's not sweet. It's more like a vegetable, and with that sweatiness to it, like strange things are very close to be beautiful, like irreplaceable. I hope that we will get more comments about strange scents. So I particularly ask you to find a perfume with that rotten leaves for our Igor that he's looking for. Yeah,
I think we'll turn up a few results here. Start with Carduce and go from there.
Okay, I will actually. I have samples. I will check it. I will definitely smell that one and recommend. I wish everyone great morning, day, or night whenever you are in the world. So, and you guys have a nice evening.
Thank you. Great to see you all again, and good to see everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye.